Thank you very much for this nice introduction. It's very good to be among friends. It was, I have to say, quite intimidating to be invited to give a talk on the future of digital health. I certainly do not consider myself a futurist. But what I'm here to present to you today is, I would say, a wish list. If not something that I strongly believe into, so much so that we made MENA Capital's priority to invest in these deep-rooted beliefs. There are three things that I'd like to take away from this presentation. These are my three ingredients, my three wishes in the list that I would like you to walk away with and learn a little bit more about. There are predictions about what the future of digital health will look like. And the first one of them might sound a little harsh, but I really do believe into it. Digital health will be retired. Not retired as a vertical, but retired as a label. And I'd like to tell you a little bit more about why I have the belief that this is a very good thing for the health technology ecosystem. You know, I still remember when I was sitting with Paul Yock, the founder of Stanford Biodesign. It wasn't too long ago, just about a decade ago, at the Biodesign Center in the heart of the medical campus at Stanford University in California. And we were talking about what to call this new series of initiatives that we were about to launch that would be about the intersection of healthcare and life sciences and this world of technology that was coming into the market, wireless technologies, mobile phones. I remember brainstorming a lot of names. We should call it wireless health. We should call it connected health, mobile health, digital health. We chose the wrong name, of course. We called it initially wireless health, and then it became mobile health, and then finally digital health as the industry, smarter than us, was catching up with the right nomenclature. But this is how it started. It started as a word of intersection between life science and healthcare, and the word of information technology, wherein we believed that the primary mode of engagement was through software and sensors and computing platforms. It became a lot bigger than that. Technology evolved and came to maturity. The emphasis on data and information sharing encompassed a number of technology pillars, from various flavors of computing, pure software, to the addition of hardware devices ranging from very small skin sensors to robotics and never heard before microneedles capabilities embedded into closed-loop systems, with the addition of course, more computing. And then biology as well came into play, and we started seeing the rise of organs and chips and the liquid biopsy and genomics and so forth. So digital health has really exploded in the past decade in which I was involved. So while preparing for this presentation, I decided to go back and think a little bit more about what are we doing, exactly why are we doing what we're doing, and to think about the space of healthcare, which in the end is what moves us forward and compels us to innovate. And there we see, again, services, pure services. We see the world of pharma and biotechnology, and then all the area of technology on the right, from basic technologies to more advanced and the ones that are coming to maturity right now. Well, I think of the world of life sciences as the one that is not about the pure service of healthcare, and within it there is the pocket of technology, which I call health technology, which goes beyond the basic manufacturing and marketing of devices to encompass deep technologies, equipment and supplies, including software, and that area that initially was known as digital health, digital and information technology, from clinical decision support and personalized medicines and so forth. But again, the nomenclature of digital health has been exploding, so I preferred to call it health technology and think about how to break down this area into what it is today in the end, which is just about a couple of things. One, we innovate for the purpose of continuing to provide better clinical intended uses. So we develop medical devices that are the ones that essentially we measure the efficacies on in terms of sensitivity and specificity. They have to go through regulatory pathways before they can be commercialized. And on the other side, the other thing that we're trying to innovate upon is processes. And we do so both inside hospital, healthcare delivery institutions that need to improve care management, but also more pharmaceutical and biotechnologies and anybody who is in the business of healthcare and wants to improve their business outcomes, very often with a claim of being able to improve the economics of their businesses. And those are what I call health IT end tools. I very much prefer to think about health technology and about these two pillars of intervention and digital health because I'm seeing the labeling increasingly becoming meaningless. Think about just the digital health or so-called digital health companies that have gone public in the first half of this year, according to information that I pulled from Fenwick. Very few of these companies would have been called digital health back in 2010 when we were brainstorming what to call the new set of initiatives that were coming out of Stanford by Design to address the intersection of technology, information technology, and healthcare. So we are essentially already abusing of this definition. And it's true also if you zoom into Israel, by the way. If you look at the digital health companies in Israel that have raised the most money in the first 4 months of 2021, you see a number of companies, of which perhaps only the ones that are so-called most patient-centric would have been called digital health back in 2010. Today, instead, we see companies such as C2i Genomics, liquid biopsy for cancer tumor monitoring, or even technologies such as, for example, CapWorks, non-invasive FFR measurements for coronary interventions. That is still digital health, or as I prefer it, it's time to call it health technology. In the end, it's just healthcare. Technology is becoming pervasive across all categories. It's very hard to find medical devices today that do not include some angle of sensors and data platforms to it. And even pure services, and remember the upper left corner of my graph before, includes some technology-enabled components. Interestingly enough, there are very few service-oriented facilities today that are themselves technology innovators. They tend to be the customers. Time will tell. I actually believe that those businesses themselves are becoming smarter, and they're starting to innovate when they don't find the technologies that they need in the market in order to be better at their own businesses. So essentially, virtually all health systems and clinics make some use of technologies, and the nomenclature is becoming really quite stretched. There is another advantage in getting rid of the emphasis on technology, and just remember, this is about healthcare becoming better. We continue to see, especially in the first decade of health technology and digital health, a technology approach to innovation. Whereas, as you have learned today from the teachings of Stanford by Design, we much prefer to think about a need pull in the design process of bringing health technologies to market. And digital health, and this is my second prediction, if you prefer, my second belief and wish in the list, is that digital health will be increasingly need-driven. It wasn't that way, unfortunately, in the first few years of the growth of the sector. Process of deeply understanding all the alignment of stakeholders that is imbued in the process of biodesign, bringing technologies to market is extremely difficult. And some people that came into the market from a pure technology place, I'm familiar with bringing this complexity to life and finding alignment of stakeholders. Unfortunately, healthcare is certainly not the place for experimentation, and in disregarding what are the true incentives for bringing innovation that is potentially life-saving, and even if not directly, has an impact in the way in which people receive care and new drugs and devices. As you probably have heard already today, early in the presentation, charting the innovative process of biodesign, starting with true understanding of clinical need, pursuing a process of need-driven innovation to come up with new and disruptive technologies, and then upon them, and the understanding of alignment of incentives of stakeholders, implement viable business solutions is the way for success, and it's proven to the risk, the probability of sustainable businesses that grow and have true impact. And the first piece is key. Clinical need understanding is key. I stretch it actually beyond just the clinical need understanding, but I prefer to speak about it again as healthcare need, in that there are organizations that are not necessarily directly involved in the process of having clinical outcomes, which are key to making healthcare better. As you have seen, this starts at Stanford University in its purest form with the process of identifying many needs, sending people inside hospital organizations to observe and label as many needs as possible, hundreds of them. In the process of which I've seen some teams at Stanford by Design have lists of 300-400 needs, each one of them structured in a way that can be easily compared in order for the best need to survive the process of vetting and then being fed into the innovation and design thinking methodology that is known as by design. So that eventually only the best few needs survive, and upon them viable businesses can be born. I'm the first one to say that this is unfortunately not always easy. Very few places in the world are special enough to allow for multidisciplinary teams handpicked from hundreds of candidates to spend months inside the hospitals to do this process in its purest form. In reality, it is okay not to start that way. But we can still remember some of the pillars of the by-design process, such that need-driven innovation comes to life. For example, always remember to discriminate between the must-haves of the design process and the nice-to-haves, and keep the essential criteria that the need must be met in mind as a guiding light for the process of designing health technology innovations. These are the essential ones. Solutions that do not meet these criteria has to be rejected. And I've seen far too many innovators sometimes forget the North Star in the design process as they continue to evolve their businesses, or fail to incorporate new learnings that might actually require those must-haves to be rethought. The other important tip that even innovators that don't have the luxury of spending months into Stanford hospitals to see needs firsthand is to remember that needs are broken down essentially in problems, populations, and outcomes. And first step is articulating those, and the next is to understand the alignment of all the different stakeholders. If you're familiar with the business canvas, I like to think of the business canvas in a by-design optics as an n-dimensional layer of business canvases. Each one of them needs to be thought through the eyes and the lenses of a different stakeholder in healthcare. And each one of them has to be developed according to this framework in order to make sure that alignment can be found on the intersection of all those layers. And another important keyword that designers of health technology should keep in mind is the concept of value, meaning the years of developing innovation for innovation's sake, just looking at clinical outcomes, just looking at opportunities to create improvement in those lenses are over. Always keep in mind that the denominator has to be about dollars. And so value is improvement in outcomes per dollar spent. And the question of how much value your innovation brings into the healthcare system is one that needs to be kept in mind on every stage of the innovation process, from the identification of interesting needs to actually coming up with interesting technology solutions to the implementation of those in the context of a strategy of a business model. As mentioned before, my prediction is that digital health will be increasingly need-driven. I think it took about a decade of experiences in the marketplace to show that actually this is true. And businesses that are surviving are those that have found their positioning at the intersection of a very strong understanding of patients and physician needs, or said put differently, of clinical workflow, and a strong alignment of the broader stakeholders in this market, such that their incentives are met in a growing market. So you want to be there where there are strong foundations for business success in building health technology solutions, and where others have failed, typically have been noble undertakings that have very much in mind the needs of the patients or of the physicians, but forget the highly regulated and complex ecosystem in which these live, or technologies that instead have addressed opportunities in a growing market with perhaps a very strong alignment of what the key large stakeholders and enterprises are, but with very poor understanding of the clinical workflows. And so they had ambitious plans for change, but they forget to check in with the reality of how patients are actually managed inside those institutions by other people that are responsible for their care. Perhaps the last thing that I would like you to say is that I really do believe that the future of digital health will be increasingly one that you, doctors and physicians in the audience, will make of it. And I'd like to demonstrate it with actually a few hard numbers, if you like, if you let me. So, first of all, belief number one, this belief is rooted back into the origin of biodesign. If you look at where the Stanford Biocenter for Biodesign is placed inside Stanford University campus, you will find it in a very strategic position in the middle of the Stanford Graduate School of Business, the engineering department of Stanford University, the School of Medicine, and the hospitals. But if you, again, triangulate it exactly, you will find that the closest proximity is that of the hospital. Stanford Biocenter for Biodesign is inside that pink area, which is known as the medical campus. I think this was an excellent choice and validation of the fact that, again, close proximity to medical professionals is key for true innovation in health technology to happen. I bring further proof to it in the form of Phil, a friend and an entrepreneur that I have the privilege to fund at Nina Capital as one of our most recent investments. Phil has a very impressive background as a physician. He had a teaching fellowship and a postgraduate certificate in medical education at the University of Bristol. He was ranking first in UK cardiothoracic surgery national selection and appointed as the National Institute for Health Research Academics Clinical Fellow in Cardiothoracic Surgery, all before the age of 30, in one of the disciplines which is the hardest to crack into, at least from a European standard. I'm not sure in Israel. And now he has this funded medal. It's what once would have been called a digital health company. Today it's a medical technology startup, let's call it that way, which addresses the inequality of global healthcare training, essentially creating a platform for physicians continuing education, where medical associations can provide original content and where physicians can continue to manage all of the certifications that they need to continue to seek in order to keep up to date with the evolution of medicine and healthcare. I call this the platform for activist physicians, and it has had a tremendous, fantastic start in the first 3 years of existence and was recently a startup recognized as one of the top 10 breakout startups in one of the largest technology conferences that took place just a couple of weeks ago in Lisbon. This is just one example. In reality, if you look at the 25 investments that Nina Capital has made in the last 2 years of its existence, we are indeed very young organizations, you will find a number of companies that have developed fairly complex technology solutions in response to needs that span the gamut from ophthalmology to mobility of data, hospital management, women's health, orthopedics and oncology, radiology and cardiovascular. And of these 25 companies, in fact, 13, more than half, are companies that were funded by physicians. This is the list of the 13 companies that were started thanks to the insight and the drive and the commitment of physicians across the world, from the East Coast in the United States to Northern Ireland to Switzerland and so forth. I really do believe that we need you, physicians, to create the future of health technologies. We're seeing physicians in various positions, not just funders, but chief medical officers, advisors, investors, and board members. And consistently, the ones that have you on board are the ones that perform best. The reason why is, again, we're an early stage investors. And when we invest, very often what makes a difference is team. and strong understanding of the health economics basics and the stakeholder alignment, as mentioned before. The technology is rather immature just yet, and it's very rare that the technology development becomes the reason for a startup not to actually succeed. More often is upon those two pillars, team, need, and value, that companies develop poor foundations for growth. The rest, quite generally, can be fixed. And so, as further evidence of what I said is my belief for the future, please meet our physicians innovators at Nina Capital, the people that have made more than half of our portfolio companies become reality. And I leave you with this encouragement to get engaged. To contact us if you think that we might be able to help in some way, and to bet on the future of health technology, not digital health, which will be increasingly need-driven. So learned by design process, even if it cannot be applied in its purest form, it is extremely helpful to the process of de-risking new venture innovation. And get engaged. This is you, physician, becoming a physician activist. And I really do believe that companies are stronger and better when they are able to work with physicians from the very beginning as founders and first employees. That is all I had prepared for you today. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take any. If not, I very much thank you for listening, and I look forward to hearing from you later on. Here is my contact information if you'd like to reach out.